And now I'm joined by Tatiana Kukhareva. She's the deputy head at the Sputnik News from Moscow. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for joining for India Today right now. 22 days on, it's almost been a month now. What does the situation look like for now? How are you looking at the diplomatic negotiations that are on? Is either side willing to blink first, and which side do you think that's going to be?
Good day to you as well. The diplomatic negotiations, we're unfortunately, again, are forced to just wait and observe how it's going on and who will indeed blink first. But having said that, the demands of the Russian side have been the same from day one, and they are very unlikely to change because these are the demands that have actually forced the Russian side to take on this military operation. And this means the recognition of, the two republics, and the recognition of the sovereignty, the status of Crimea, demilitarization and denazification doesn't change. It will not change. So if by blinking first you mean if Russia is going to change its stance, I'm pretty sure that it is not going to happen. In the meantime, we've been watching for 22 days. We've been watching over what's going on. And if you've been watching closely, then I think you understand as well as I do that, the Russian military is where it's planned to be. It's moving on. So safe to say that the operation is going on exactly as planned.
What do you think is looking like as the war is still on in Ukraine and there are refugees on the border? Kiev city is where it appears the last man is still standing. What do you think is happening on that front as of now? Because if the negotiations are not leading to any sort of solid conclusion for now, that only appears that that right now this crisis is going to continue for the next few days as well.
It is going to continue, Pooja, and you're very right. But let me just step in here for a second and talk about Kiev. You're saying Kiev is still standing. Well, it's not yet been assaulted.
Yes.
To say the least. So, and if I remember correctly, that's the first question that you and your colleagues have been asking me for this last week, saying like, is tomorrow going to be the assault? And my response will not change, is that Kiev is still not evacuated. There are people, there are civilians inside, and it does take time. Any military operation that takes priority in keeping civilian lives does take time. You've seen how it happened in Mariupol, and yet, it has been taken into control, and the last remains of the Azov battalion are now trying to hold on to whatever they can. And I'd say that it's still a matter of a couple of days of the issue of full control of the city and all of the outskirts and full destruction of the Nazi battalion, but it is a matter of days. When it comes to Kiev, it is the Russian forces are surrounding it.
Yes.
They're not going in. You can see that very clearly because, as I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, the civilian population is of utmost priority. So they're trying to avoid unnecessary victims.
And of course, Ukraine, on the other hand, is claiming that their civilians are also still being targeted. But how are we looking at the West right now? How are we looking at the United States of America, Europe? Because they have already said no man on the ground, but there appears to be drones now that are being supplied. We're talking about kamikaze drones versus new drones that are making entry into the aerial attacks that are on in Ukraine. So how are you looking at these countries and their involvement at this point?
Well, unfortunately, Pooja, this has not changed either. I mean, the West, the United States in particular, they've supplied so much military aid, lethal military aid into Ukraine over the past 8 years, starting this year, and it's getting higher and higher and higher. Obviously, there is, first of all, and we need to understand that this is very much an economic issue. Any sort of military activity where you can get in with military equipment. It's a question of money, first of all. But second of all, the US has been present in this conflict from day one, from the beginning of it, when people went into Maidan, and their behavior hasn't changed. Just yesterday, I'm sure you heard it. President Biden called President Putin a war criminal.
Correct. Yes.
I'm sure you know that there is a certain procedure in place that you can't just call somebody whatever you want to call them. This is kind of illegal, to say the least. It means that the US is literally giving out its own judgment without any sort of with no trial, no proof, no anything. They want to call our president a war criminal. They just do. And that's how they've been behaving this whole time. Whatever they want to do, they're doing. That is the problem. That has been the problem because, that was the main issue with the fact that nobody could stop the deliberate shelling of the Donbass region, which US was very much a part of because it was supplying the weapons that they were shelled with. Just a couple of days ago, I think, what was it? It was on Tuesday, the city of Donetsk was bombed, the center of the city, the very center. There was the ballistic missile was fired and it was shot down. And this is the only reason why the number of civilian victims, that was not a military target. It was the center of the city. I hope you've seen the pictures. If you haven't, you can contact our news agency. Yes. We'll supply them to you. Yeah. This was the only reason the number of victims was limited to 20 plus victims, not 100. But this is a ballistic missile. And they fire it at the center of the city without any kind of, any pretext.
Tatiana, in this claims, counterclaims that are coming in from both sides, as a journalist yourself, as a deputy head at Sputnik News, how difficult it is right now to get verified information coming in from the ground, because in many areas either there would be an internet constraint or people are not able to get their voices out. So how are you really bringing out what precisely is happening on the ground then?
It has been very difficult because, from a personal point of view and a personal standpoint, not even just as a journalist, but obviously I can't, completely turn that side off. I know people whose families are in Mariupol and they're very much, Russian speaking, very much anti-Azov battalion, but they have been even refusing to, you say, look, can I please even publish like a screenshot of a WhatsApp chat? And they don't allow this because they're very afraid. They were very afraid, at least, to be in any way associated with any sort of, because you could not speak out against this. It's a. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's a paramilitary formation that then became the part of the Ukraine's military and security service. But there are no rules. And obviously, the better the technology, the more difficult it is to verify images. So, which is why, there have been so many claims coming in from the Ukrainian side, but, the Russian media have been kind of a little bit slower in this department because, we rely on the footage that we get from our correspondents on the ground, and they are locals, so they know it well. They know the terrain, they know people out there, and also the footage that is supplied by the Ministry of Defense. And those people don't give out anything until they are completely 100% sure of what they're showing, because this is the reputation of an entire military force of Russia, basically. So yes, and just the amount of fake news, fake information, fake imagery in this conflict is astonishing. I've never seen it in the last 10 years. I have never seen
But Tatiana, because I also asked that for the reason that because now Ukraine is saying their hospitals are being bombed, infant babies are dying, there are bodies piling up, there are images coming in from Mariupol and other areas where there are children, infant babies in bomb shelters. And of course, a lot of people are facing problems, which is understandable also given the ground situation. So how does that get reflected? Because to the outside world, this perhaps is the biggest humanitarian crisis that has happened in recent times?
Well, it is questionable, really, because when we say it's the biggest humanitarian crisis, then by definition, it means that, the whole of the Arab Spring was irrelevant, and we're still living to this day. I mean, Libya, for instance, it's a failed state to this day. There is, to compare what's going on in Ukraine with what's going on in Libya or what has gone on in Syria so far, I'd say it's a bit of a stretch, and I'm not even saying about, countries like that lived through the drastic destruction that is usually caused by American forces that come in, like Iraq, for instance. There's also, there's the whole of the Middle East. So I would not compare it to that. And just as you said, there are claims of hospitals being bombed, and then there are pictures of babies in bomb shelters. But if you say that the babies are dead, then you need to show dead babies. Forgive my skepticism here and my cynicism, but you know it as well as I do. In all of those countries that I named you, we got all of the pictures. I mean, when Colonel Gaddafi was killed, that was aired all over the world. Everybody saw that.
But there are images that are coming of people and of children who have received injuries, and some of those visuals are from the hospital. Yes, and that is also
injuries, yes.
Okay.
Injuries, yes.
Okay, I understand. There are bodies that are falling up. But there are bodies that the visuals that have come. But I think you do make a fair point. It's important also for information to be verified, and only then it needs to be out. And we're ensuring that happens, and from verified sources, and only then that is being put out. But Tatiana, I want to thank you for talking to us, telling us how the situation is currently and how it's going to be in the next few days as well. And I'll come back to you in just a short while from now. Thank you so much. For now, Tatiana joining us from Moscow.